Hello, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of vital conversations that I have with global soul stewards from all over the world who provide us with an understanding of how we can create a new hierarchy of values that is absolutely significant at this unique time of becoming. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. And here we are. Fantastic. Oh my goodness me. I have been so looking forward to this, sharing this wonderful man, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon. Brandon is just the most extraordinary gentleman. And so Stacey, Deborah, we have one or two people here at the moment, not as many as I would like. Oh, Stephen, they come rolling in. Sarah, Corrine. Anyway, let me introduce you to, because I really want you to hear what this extraordinary gentleman has to share with us. So let me introduce you, Brandon, to you. So this is Brandon Thomas that we have sitting with us. Brandon is the host and producer of the unstoppable podcast show, Expanding Reality. He's a philosopher, a musician, a spiritual seeker, a rancher, lover of all things appertaining to the supernatural, and has an everlasting fascination for interesting people and unusual out there ideas. Now, listen, some of his show topics include alternative realities, UFOs, self empowerment, life coaching, abundance creation, conspiracy theory, ETs, music, science and technology, astrology, astronomy, psychology, psychedelics, and an endless interest in the mysteries of sentience with all of its power.
Ooh.
Welcome, Mr. Thomas.
Okay, you added that last bit to my bio. Thank you, by the way. I feel super welcome, but I'm keeping that. So thank you for the addendum. I appreciate it. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, sir. This is a pleasure.
It's an absolute blessing. You're a grace to be here, and I will send this to you. Of course,
Thank you.
Because I love
way better than mine.
Just injecting superlatives, particularly as you're so buoyant. What's so wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, about Brandon, you can probably feel already that he has this extraordinary, wonderful inner child that comes out to play, and then you experience this man who has experienced life in so many different possibilities. Where did life begin?
Oh, like for all of us or me personally?
No, you personally.
Me personally, I would say that it begins every time I discover a new idea. Of course, we all have one of those ways that we could go about it. Like, well, my first memory was at my 4th birthday. But for me, life began when I really started looking around at this place and figuring out mysteries that were here and discovering for myself my own powers of discernment. That's when life began for me.
And when you say discovering the powers of discernment, can you remember the first sentient experience that you had that brought you to that quality of discernment?
Ooh, it would be when I was waiting tables. I was actually introduced to a man by synchronicity, as the universe tends to work with the most monumental occasions of our life. And this gentleman was sitting at a table reading a newspaper by himself, the only person in my section. He then scoffed at something he read in the newspaper. My 18-year-old mind up to this point was really not that into discovering truths. I was way more into girls and way more into cars and all that good stuff. So I was pretty focused on the 3D options. And so when he scoffed at this paper and he just goes, "Can you believe this?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he read me a part out of it that sounded perfectly fine to my uninitiated ears, but in his mind, and he pointed out that it was crap. It was not accurate. It was lies. It was blatant propaganda, and it was not true. And I just said, "Well, how do you know that?" He goes, "You got to read between the lines." And he started adding up a few things that then really made me, it was the first big question for me. Hang on. So the newspaper can just print stuff that's not true. I now see how naive that concept is. But at the time, it was a non sequitur. It was an unknown unknown. I didn't even think that was a possibility. Why would somebody lie to that? And how could they get away with it? It's in print. This is what you're telling people. How could you do that? Even on the small things, but especially on the small things, right? Because you can't trust them on that. You can't trust them on anything. So that was the first time I really looked around at this place like, maybe there's more here to discover. That's also about the time that I started really looking into UFOs. This was something that was just magical and mysterious to me. And then that's also about the time at the age of 18 that I had my first very intense psychedelic experience. And that was very, very intense. So that was eye-opening and reality shattering in a whole nother paradigm. This is also the age that I was enlightened to conspiracy theories, which I consider myself nowadays way more a conspiracy analyst, and I'm happy to explain the difference. And then also I was handed a book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. So in 1 year, year and a half period, my entire life flipped. It was eye-opening that this reality isn't as sound and as solid as you may and reliable as you may think it is with a psychedelic experience, or there's at least options for that not to be true. Also, with questioning the official narratives as far as stories go, that's where my conspiratorial mind came in, and so now all ego structures, or most of them, have been checked off the list. And then the last one was religion with the Conversations with God book, and I was grateful enough. Neil Donald Walsh changed my life. I mean, and I tell everybody this: he is the reason I'm not an atheist, because the other way didn't. That was definitely not appealing. And I just never heard of another option. I was grateful enough to have Neil Donald Walsh on my show to talk about his new book when it came out last year called The God Solution. And that was a huge moment for me. I mean, the bucket list conversation to sit there with the guy, 39 copies sold in 37 different languages, billions of books sold, millions of lives changed. And it was, but for this guy, it was unbelievable. And so I checked all three of those things off the list within a year period, and then my life has never been the same. And that's really, that was the kickoff.
How extraordinary. And, let's just elucidate for anybody who may not know who Neil is.
Oh,
and when was this, Brandon, when you discovered his writings?
2001. So it was all within
Okay.
this year. And I was handed the first Conversations with God book.
So it's
2001,
actually, it's just 10 years after his publishing of the books.
Right.
The book first emerged around 92, 93. I remember discovering them when I was in New Mexico working with a Native American shaman in Taos, New Mexico. And suddenly I went into, it was in Santa Fe. I went into the Ark bookshop, which has to be one of the greatest mystical bookstores on the planet. Wonderful. I still have wonderful tools that I bought in the Ark. However, there it was, and I started reading. So I'm completely with you in the resonance. So Neil Donald Walsh, ladies and gentlemen, had the most extraordinary experience before he started hearing conversations with God, so to speak, or writing the conversations with God. You possibly, having had a conflab with the gentleman, I've been introduced to him twice, and I've tried to get him onto deep dialogues, but he's always eschewed me. But tell me, how can you remember his starting point for the stimuli that came when he began writing conversations?
Oh yeah, he had a really rough go. He was into the rope, suicidal, was homeless for a time. Could barely scrounge up money to get French fries. So a very tragic story. And he was late in his life before this all happened. And he sat down as he recants it, and he just says, or recalls it rather. He just said that he sat there with just a desperate question to ask God, "Why me?" And I'm just done with this. Why should I keep living? Kind of thing. And then he just said, I got an answer. And he wrote out an answer. And that started what would become this huge 3-book series initially, and then this entire 37-book layout of something he referred to as Conversations with God. And that back and forth, that dialogue is an ongoing process, but it was the information contained within that really tripped me out. This is where I got introduced to the idea of unity consciousness. I had never heard of it before. And so to the idea, and I had the framework already conceptually for it with my psychedelic experience. So I'd already gone into that going, hang on, so we're all connected. And then I hear this unity conscious thing and I go, hang on, so somebody else thinks we're all connected that's not talking about psychedelics. And then all kinds of things. And so it was this impetus for him to write that then led us all down this path. I mean, he has changed millions of people's lives with this perspective, but he had to go through it. And all of the great stories have that hero's journey to them. We all have a past. It's just like, ugh. But on the other side of that, you get this, you get understanding, you get enlightenment. And of course it's all necessary. It's because it's part of this place. So it's here. So it has to be here in my perception. This is how I look at it. And so very necessary. So use it as an opportunity. That's it. Transmute it, baby.
Yes, I always remember the story about him sitting on a park bench and he found one of those yellow legal pads.
Mm-hmm.
Only be found in the United States of America. I mean, they hold great magic. For me, do you have one? Yay! I think they're absolutely amazing. You can't find them anywhere else in the world. I need
Really?
to buy a whole load. It's so US.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and it has that particular smell. Anyway, I love stationery. It's the ancient scribe within me. But going back to what you were sharing with us at the very beginning about the nature of the way that you were awakened, and so began what has evidently become a very progressive initiation. I'm intrigued by the way that we humans perceive all of this. And what I'm really meaning is in our sentience, that we know that the five senses are literally, as it were, the portals through which all of our beliefs and all of our perceptions are developed, all of our attitudes are developed. And there you were bubbling along as the waiter, 18, 19 years of age, discovering your way in the world. And suddenly here is this gentleman reading the newspaper, and he introduced you to subtext, it seemed.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the text. And in those moments, I felt that as you were describing it, there was a time lapse where you were able to embody something very specific. Am I intuitively on the right line?
You definitely are. Yes, sir.
I feel that this is a remarkable tool that we all need right now because our lives are so pixelated, our attention is so pixelated by all of the stimuli, all of the demands that are placed upon us. And just through social media alone, you're a champion of social media. I'm beginning to learn how to use it. It's just fascinating, but it's so demanding.
It really is.
As we become pixelated, I wonder what your own innate experience was. You said that it was, what was the word that you used? That it was naive. I would love to say it was innocent.
Innocent, absolutely. At the age of 18, I would say innocent's a better word for it. Naive implies that there's information in front of you that you look at but dismiss right away because you just don't know any better. So you're right. I was presented with information, and I don't exist in a plane of cognitive dissonance. I don't really fall into that model. So with new information, I readjust the paradigm. I'm like, wow, let's factor this in. Let's integrate this into our experience and see how it can be applicable. And so with this one in particular, yes, it was an innocence where I was now exposed to something new and looked around with this distrust. I mean, really, it was just this hang on. So if this is going on, and then you get to your, and I mean, maybe one of the first things you could think back to this, if you want to go super trauma with it, would be like the Santa Claus thing, with your parents, and you're like, hang on, well, that wasn't true. I don't know if, if we want to yell spoiler alert or something, but I'm pretty sure most of your audience knows, or at least doesn't have anyone in the car that knows that. That's kind of the first thing where you look around and you just go, but they told me, and you can even see later on it's from a place of innocence, but still it kind of has that. And so that translated into the way that like daddy government and the world were talking to us, and that's who's informing my parents. And so now I'm sitting here saying, hang on, they're informing everyone. But it's like the Mark Twain quote. I mean, those who, and his was applicable for the medium at the time, which was the newspaper. And he said, those who don't read the newspaper are uninformed, and those who are misinformed is read the newspaper, uninformed that don't. And I would rather just not be lied to. I'd rather come up with it on my own. I'd rather figure out what's going on for me. I haven't watched the news or paid attention to it seriously. Decades, man. I mean, in a long time. That's not the way that I choose to find out what's going on in the world. I'll put it that way. I'd just rather not be lied to.
I hear you. And of course, I know that lots of people will agree in their sentience of what you're describing. But I'm also aware of the fact that you are this wonderfully discerning individual, that you developed this apparatus over the years of being able to detach, feel stillness, observe. You move extraordinarily fast. You have this brilliant articulate intellect. So you have a mental body that's moving at about 950 miles an hour. But I also feel you to be really in your body, really sentient. and how the pulsation of your passion and the way that you live, and all of those vital ingredients are so important for you, as well as having this wonderful bubbling intellect. And so I'm just rather interested in this notion of how today, because we're surrounded by false news or fake news, how our audience can become more aware of the text, can lead us to the subtext. How do you discern? How do you perceive? How do you evaluate?
Um, I I will give you. I'm gonna attempt to give you the best example I can without offending the most people, and without which, I mean, you can never guarantee. But what I mean to say is there's some sensitive subjects that usually are really big indicators, and there are some secret societal issues that I feel that I'm pretty aware of that are very blatant and out in the open, where these secret societies have rituals that they uh, that we all partake in if you partake in it. The halftime shows at the Super Bowl in America is one of the big ones. That's a very big, obvious Masonic ritual. And there's some syntax in these things, especially having to do with numbers. When you see the number 33 repeated and flashed, you know that there's something going on with that number. Now, without being as controversial as I can, I will say that one of the things I picked up on in 2020, let's just say that, was there's a lot of governors out here that the second that the pandemic started, they started saying the first reports as they were coming out, and this all happened within a 3-day period, by the way. Within 3 days, most of the governments of our country had come out and said 33 new cases. 33 cases today were admitted to the hospital. We just got 33 cases in Portland, 33 cases in Tampa. It was the same number. What are the odds, in any population center of any degree, that specific number would be the total number to kick all of this off and be that, what are the odds? I mean, it's again kind of the odds that our moon and our sun are the same size relative to each other, and that, one matches up perfectly for eclipses, and vice versa, the earth over the moon. The odds on these types of things are what resonate with me. It's when the big conspiracy theories aren't that crazy to me, because there's a tapestry here that I've just been trained to see. I just have the eyes for it. It's one of those things, like, once how I even contribute or articulate something like spiritual awakening would be ascending through a tree house, is a metaphor that I use, where as you go through a tree house, a standard tree house has the trap door that you come up through, and then it shuts behind you, no girls allowed, all that good stuff. But this trap door is your spiritual awakening to your new level. And once you reach this new level of awareness, and this awareness happens here too, with you being lied to, once you start seeing it, you see it everywhere. But that trap door doesn't have a handle on the inside. Once you ascend to the new level, it shuts behind you. There is no going back. You hear this in the movie The Matrix. There's a character named Cypher who was conspiring against. He's a Judas character in this. And he actually tells them, hey, I want to go back. I don't want to remember anything. I don't want to know what this is like. But that's the problem. It's toothpaste back in the tube. You can't unlearn awareness. So when you start seeing things like this, then now all I see is, the hand in the shirt, or the 33 everywhere, or checkerboard floors in music videos. These are all Masonic symbols. And it tells you that they don't think that you're very smart, because you just buy their products, you listen to their stuff, and you engage in this ritual every time you partake or imbibe in that. That is, in my mind, what this place is all about. That's what your discernment is here to calibrate. It is to be a grander version of yourself in every moment that you're presented here. Take yourself up on that. Allow yourself not to force the process, and allow yourself to be open and surprised by the universe, but also to have a very concentrated effort on figuring out who you are. And then that's where your discernment comes from. If you're running around in a dark room, you don't even know who you are, and you're just grabbing for anything, then anything you reach onto becomes your safe place. It's your identity. But if you're the one radiating the light, the world comes to you, and you don't have to run around frantic. And then anything you grab onto, just latch onto it and subscribe to all of the beliefs. This also comes back to that word, beliefs, is a big one. There's a movie made quite a while back called Dogma, and it's by a great director called Kevin Smith. And he writes a lot of comedies and quirky comedy type things. But in this particular film, Alanis Morissette plays God. It's a great movie. There's a character Chris Rock plays, and he is an apostle in this. And what he says about this whole concept is beliefs. I don't have beliefs. I have ideas. because ideas are easier to change. That is where my cognitive dissonance goes out the window with my lack of the subscription to beliefs. I have even gotten to the point with my thought experiments where I don't know what the structure of this place is. I don't know what this place is. I'm not 100% convinced it's flat. I'm not 100% convinced it's a ball hurling through space. I'm not 100% convinced that we're not all just brains in a vat somewhere being fed electrical signals that simulate a reality. But I'm okay with that. It seems that the more, excuse me, flexible that I got on the rigidity of reality, the more open I am to integrate and assimilate new concepts in a way that most people I don't think do. I don't hold on to ideas. I'm my lifeboat. I know no one out there is going to come save me. So I'm the one creating my happiness. I'm the one creating the world around me. And I'm the one radiating the light. If that's the model, and that's what I choose to believe, subscribe to rather, then that's the way that it goes. I found a very comfortable way of going about this. And like I said, I've never felt more sane, not knowing what the hell this place is.
Mhm, mm. And presumably one of the key factors of this was when you became really aware of centering and grounding your physiology,
Mhm.
so that you were actually able to, as it were, step back. I mean that metaphorically, obviously, but see the macro with greater clarity rather than being fixated with the micro. You know, that we are all indulging in micro, but do we have the ability to just step back,
Mhm.
detach with stillness and observe? And that's when to me, it means that we become really aware of the total cognizance of what cosmic intelligence could be about.
Mhm.
And for me, that's a very sensual experience. That's a very physical experience. So, as an intuitive, I would suggest that although I develop my cerebral energy, my intellect, to be able to articulate what I'm seeing, it's purely sentient. So I just feel it. And that's why I would equivocate over the difference between belief and idea. I feel that idea is a cerebral manifestation, whereas a belief is something that you feel absolutely in the body. The difficulty is with our physique and the way that we live our lives, particularly with the conundrum over fear, is do we get fixed in the belief? And the whole point is that truth is as evolutionary as everything else.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a
And,
process.
and music was really drew you very powerfully, didn't
Mhm.
it? And what was it about music? Because you know, when you speak, you sing.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah,
Have this,
absolutely.
you have this melody and this rhythm, which is extraordinary. So tell us about. Can you tell us about music?
First of all these compliments. I'm gonna have to go do a mushroom trip after this to rebalance my ego. Thank you so much for everything. This is just so sweet. I'm here for it. I'm open to receive, but thank you. I'm just very
It's
grateful.
called Love, Brandon.
I know it is. So music, I was drawn to because my mom told me not to. That's the
Ah,
honest answer. Sometimes that can be motivation enough, right?
yeah.
Mom did not want me playing music. Did not care for the kind of music that I liked. Very religious upbringing, and so actually I self-taught, which only solidified my determination. So I'm actually a self-taught musician. Don't read a lick of music. But that guitar back there on the wall got me to tour all over the US. I went on tours around I went around China, all over the place and just had a wonderful time.
Mm,
So I had just a cheap little electric guitar with no amp. So it was just strings and a piece of wood that you couldn't really hear very well, but you could kind of hear it still. So what I did to teach myself guitar was I had a little boombox radio that I kept in my closet, plugged in from the outside, very sneaky, right? And I would listen to music in there that my mom didn't care for, and I would learn it. And the way that I would learn it is by listening to it and then playing it, just figuring out what those notes meant. And this is how I taught myself guitar. Now it was expedited because I usually listen to the radio since recorded music that I cared for was not allowed in the house. So I had to catch it on radio when it played live, right?
mm,
So what I would do is learn a song as fast as I could in the amount of time that I could catch it. So I would hear it very barely. I would go, ooh, that's the song I want to learn how to play. And I would grab my guitar, run into my closet, and just sit there and figure it out. Well, you have what, 3 minutes and 40 seconds to figure the thing out. And so it got me really good at training my ear because I knew I had to figure this out in the amount of time. Who knows when that song would come back on or when I would be in my room to hear it and be available to learn that. And then that's when that's how I taught myself, and then just fell in love with it, and then started writing music. And I really did that after my spiritual awakening, after some heartbreaks. A lot like my first records, uh, just about a girl, about a broken heart, as they all are. But then the next one was really good. And then I had more after that I was writing and working on it. And then it seems that the universe walked in and said, all right, you had some fun with music and hang on to your guitar. You might use it later, but we're going to do something totally different. And then 2 weeks right before my second tour of China, actually, it was going to be 2 months, bigger, better, all that. I got a phone call from my grandmother who lived in North Texas. I was in Houston or South Texas at the time. And she said, I don't know what's going on. I'm very sick. I just don't know what's going on. I just can't live by myself anymore. I need help. Well, no one else in my family talked to her. So I said, you know what? I got you, girl. I canceled the tour. I threw everything I could in my truck at the time, my 2 dogs, and we drove up here. And that ended up shifting the entire course of my life. She did end up having a really rough time, but it ended up being Alzheimer's, which I had to find out. So that was pretty tricky. And then taking care of her until she was freed from that disease. And then stuck around in North Texas. That's where I met my wife. That's where, everything happened, was from that, I guess, trajectory. And who knows what, life would have been like had I gone to China, but I don't live like that. So I'm just yeah, of
Yeah.
course it made sense. Of course I had to do this. I don't sit in the past like that.
Yeah. But your grandmother was obviously a gatekeeper.
Big time, and amazing. Like I was the only person in the family to talk to her. I would, be on tour or something, and I would drive up here to North Texas and stay with her, and I'd call her 2 or 3 times a week, if not every day. Some weeks we talked every single day, and I just absolutely adored that woman. She was Gma to me. That was my Gma, and we were just so close and so connected. And she was wonderful, man. Yeah, she was. She was the gatekeeper. She's the reason I met my wife. She's the reason you and I are talking right now. Who knows where I'd be?
Mm.
It's
We
wild.
we have a parallel story, which I won't go into now because I want to concentrate on you. But we have the whole of my life changed in the 70s when I stopped being an actor because I was living in the States, living in New York City and working on Broadway, off Broadway, and then got a casting for a movie which was being filmed in Paramount Studios in Los Angeles, and got the part and was moving to Los Angeles, having been in New York City for 18 months. And this is when the telephone rang, because this is before cell phones. So we had I had a Bakelite landline that I'd found in a skip on the road down in St. Martin's
Nice.
Place in the East Village. And everything went into slow motion. And here was my brother going, extraordinary. It was the most extraordinary experience. So I knew that I was moving through corridors of light. And was presented with the cosmos. But also in Earth terms, I was told, you need to know Mum's got terminal cancer. She's got 3 months to live. What are you going to do about it? So I let the movie go. In other words, I didn't go on tour to China. I let the movie go. I came back to the United Kingdom and nursed her. And that's when my whole life went 180 degrees and discovered where you see me now. And
How
that was
cool is that?
79. So it's very similar.
It's very similar. Yeah.
The gatekeepers are the divine feminine.
That's very interesting you say that. I can see that. Yeah, they're far more intuitive, I think. I mean, we're generalizing here, of course, but there's just some bit of information that they're receiving that we are not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or it takes an extra effort for us to dial into. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you obviously had a very powerful soul connection with your Gma.
Yes, yeah,
As
for
I
sure.
as I did with my mother, and she died in 79, so that's a long time ago, but she's still absolutely here. I can still feel her spirit. And then the doorway rather of cosmology opened for you, and you went through the doorway and started experiencing the psychedelic nature of life, both literally and metaphorically.
Oh yeah.
Uh, can you remember one of the major rites of passage post your awakening that you went through?
Chosen one was recently. I just quit my job and took the true leap of faith to open up for this new abundance that I have. So that's been a massive one. I quit drinking 9 months ago, which was a huge thing in my family, and it still is. And it's not. It's a generational trauma that I transcended. And then right after I quit drinking, I got the opportunity to, about a month later, last June, get the opportunity to take part in an ayahuasca ceremony, which I did. And that was huge and groundbreaking. So I'm constantly choosing things
Yeah.
to move me further into ascension.
What was the most salient? What was the most outstanding on the pathway of initiation, where you move through a quantum leap?
The quitting drinking was a massive one for a lot of reasons. I would say, honestly, all of these, but in different ways. So I
Mm,
would say that the drinking one was huge because that proved to me the generational trauma thing. That proved to me that I could do it. That
mm,
I mean, like I said, my real father, who I've never met, was a bad alcoholic, and his whole family, same thing. My brother on that side, same thing. And it was one of those things where it wasn't bad. I wouldn't day drink. I wouldn't, just get absolutely obliterated. Never had a DWI. Never spent the night in jail because of alcohol. But it was something that I was like, you have a couple of beers every day. Let's just shut it down and just see what that's like. And then, but I was able to do that. No one else, I don't think, in my family has. So I was the first person to do that. So that was significant to me on a generational and physiological level.
mm,
Now, I'd say spiritually, my next level up would have been, because that was a spiritual level up as well, because now you get that alcohol, that spirit out of you. And there's a lot to be said for that.
mm,
So then the next spiritual one, of course, chosen, because it's all chosen, but these were conscious chosen instead of subconscious chosen, revealed later kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
mm,
These were like, yep, let's do it. Ayahuasca was a big one. So this one transcended a lot. I'm a psychonaut, as we say. So I'm someone who adventures with psychedelics quite a bit and have for well over 20 years now. This one was different. This was something completely different. And
mm,
so in the way that it enhanced my life and did so far, it's a clarity, but it's also this wisdom. I would say that through most of my life, even though I'm not lonely, I felt alone, if that makes sense.
mhm,
With ayahuasca, it was something very, very different. This, I now feel this presence. I feel this guided,
mm,
big energy that will never get out of my blood because I've invited her in. And when grandmother ayahuasca is in you, she continues to work, and it kind of clears things as you
mm,
go through it.
mm,
It's just provided a new set of lenses for me to view the world in. I would say that.
mm,
And then the quitting the job is that one. I'll let you know how it works out. We're still we're still participating in that. So
yeah,
it's amazing. I'm honestly, I don't want to use the word handling it. I am perceiving it a lot better than I thought I would, and it's taken a ton of growth to get
mm,
to this point to where I could be okay with this, and not only okay, but choose to do it willingly,
mm,
do it, and then still choose to stay positive, knowing that
mm,
what I did was for the right reason. Again, even though we're right in the throes of it. I mean, this is a very new thing for me.
mm. And you're articulating it beautifully, because I shared the same experience 12 years ago where I realized that I could no longer live the way that I was living,
Mhm,
although in terms of the eyes of the world, I was in a very illustrious position in an
mhm,
establishment. But the point was that the establishment had changed and was being governed by a dictator. And the dictator saw who I was, and I became the psychic dustbin for this man.
mhm,
And so I stood and I had to face the terror that was in me that had been with me all my life, and I dare say from prior life, of the vanquished warrior, and discover my warriorship through a totally different force of energy in terms of grace and truth and love, but one that is defiant and courageous, very similarly to what we see evinced in these extraordinary people in Ukraine, because their level of humility, their level of vulnerability, but their level of we will not be part of the contagion of this persuasive, coercive, manipulative, violating monster. It's just very extraordinary. It's what I call a carefrontation. It's not a
I love
confrontation.
those. Yeah. Great term, by the way. I told my wife that she loves it.
Oh yes, because we talked about it before, didn't we? Yeah,
We
because we
on my episode actually, and she heard you say it after I'd said it, and she, by the way, loves you. So sometime when we talk and we have our meetings, you should. I'll introduce you.
yeah,
She'd
we
love to
must.
talk to you.
Must. Okay, so you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we've met because Brandon invited me onto his podcast, and we met, and we had this extraordinary, extraordinary time. So forgive the buddy, the bromance that we've got going on here.
Oh, we got it. It's beautiful. It's never even should have happened, by the way. This is a guided thing. So this is a beautiful thing that Stuart and I are exhibiting right now. So thank you again, Stuart, my brother. I'm
Oh,
grateful.
it's my absolute pleasure. Pure delight, pure delight. But also, because I go jump back, that I feel that what we're experiencing for our listeners, as a point of illustration of how to live as a spiritual being in a human existence, that you see what happened was that our tuning, ladies and gentlemen, became in reference of another form of reality. And so I believe that what we do is we beacon this into our from our consciousness into the cosmos, assuming that whatever we're seeing here is a screen for our consciousness, but life is not happening to us, it's responding to us. So we pick up the symbols, as you were saying, or the signs. We pick up the intuitions, the synchronicities, the serendipities, and then we begin to realize, so I need to beacon this. And suddenly Brandon stepped in. And as a result of Brandon, I mean, this is me personally for a moment, and I feel he's sensing the same thing. As we step into one another's lives, that huge resonances start taking place, because as a result of meeting Brandon, I've also met several other people who are within the same field of resonance, but just vibrating in their own unique sovereignty. I hope you get what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, because it's really about how you can surf these energies, soul surf these energies. And it's, it goes back to the initial premise that you set up for us of seeing what the text is and then recognizing what the subtext is and also the overtext. So we're not just simply consumed with ipso facto detail. We're really using the full sentience of our beings. That's what's so illusory about the intellect. It can lead us down through into a fool's paradise. But if we're really working through, now, wait a minute, can I really trust this person? Maya Angelou sums it up beautifully by saying, when somebody tells you their truth, believe them.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, now your podcast steering, it's almost like you're this wonderful musketeer, this buccaneer,
I like
because
that. Thank you.
you embrace so many different fields of reference. And I just want people to have a grasp so that they really tune into the multitudinous of all your referencing, all the people that you've interviewed and had conversations with on your podcast show, because Brandon is the most amazing podcaster, everybody. So what was the most resilient experience? What was the most sensational experience that you had? Was it?
Oh, no, you're not gonna do this to me. I'm not, because what you're asking me to do is pick a favorite guest, and so on your show, I'll say it to you. But, what it really is the entire experience itself. I can tell you that. It's not one particular instance, it's the whole damn thing, and it keeps getting more amazing. I
Mhm.
started this thing to interview a couple of people who had written some of these UFO books back here, and now that entire shelf, which you can't see all of, is all books that people have sent me that I've interviewed on the show.
Mm.
So it started that way, but it turned into this whole thing. And I wanted to make sure the name of it wasn't, "This is what UFOs are." I was like, hang on, because I'm interested in a lot of stuff. I think sports is the only thing that's kind of off my list, and simply because I'm not interested in it. I have nothing against it. Go for it, whatever. But
Can you drop in why?
uh, it seems like a distraction for me. It takes away from my focus here, which is to discover what intrigues me, and watching something that's meant to distract you, in my mind, and to divide you, in my mind, is not something that I choose to participate in. I kind of see the 3D things as that. Real Housewives of whatever. Even though these things can be viewed as like guilty pleasures or something like that, it's not something I participate in and don't miss at all. My parents are huge sports people. They keep me pretty informed as what's going on in the 3D. I'll say that. I'm not missing anything because I've got a connection to the third dimension. But I would say that they love football and stuff. So they're a big Dallas Cowboys fan, which is unfortunate, but they are. And so they drive up, it's 5 hours away from where they live in Houston to Dallas up here near us. And then we'll go to the games with them every now and then, and I'll acquiesce. I'll go. I know what the rules are. I know all of that stuff. I don't get into it in the same way that I don't get into politics. I really don't. I've, as you said, stepped back, looked at it big picture, and I'm like, oh, this is all a system meant to divide and conquer, not actually aid and help. This, again, is just how I see this. This is my opinion. So it's just not something that I participate in. So
Mm.
the way that I have articulated this in the past, and again, to no offense, is that the way that I view politics is the way I view wrestling. I can see it's not real. It's fake. It's scripted. It's meant to do something. And I see politics the same way. That's just, again, from my opinion. I know that's very divisive, but that's how I look at it. So I just choose not to participate in it.
Is it divisive? I don't see it as being divisive. I
Well,
know because I believe that in essence, the way that I fully perceive what you're sharing with us is something that I've also qualified deeply within myself. Because as a kid, I could never involve myself in the play of other children because it seemed so brutal, it seemed so cruel, and I realized that it was the ego competing with the ego, and that we're not into the essence of competition. This is the new paradigm sequence of what it is to be Homo noeticus, I feel, because the ego battles, the ego competition is simply redundant. What we're interested in is co-creativity, unity consciousness, and collaboration. As a collaborator, you can't compete. You know, there may be a diversity of opinion or ideas or feelings or beliefs or attitudes or ways of being, but the point is there's always a reverent respect for the other person as they express something that is different to one's own reality.
100%. Now, I did play a lot of sports as a kid. I actually coached and refereed soccer, and then I also played select and all of that stuff. So I played sports, but I was more in it for the physical activity. My brothers played. It was a boy thing. It was just something that we all did. And remember, very innocent, as we'll say, very entrenched in 3D. So very I'm going to say indoctrinated by the ego structures, but I will say from my higher self is slumming it to play with the locals for a little while until as a needs to move on, as a necessary tool for later on. And I still love it. I mean, I'm still very physically active. We live on a 12-acre ranch, my wife and I, and there's always stuff demanding that we're physically active out here. So it kind of works. It's just a transition of kinetic energy that I'm a fan of. And it just came in the form of sports as a child.
Yeah. And we are spiritual beings of the human experience, so our bodies are the temples for our soul, and it's a very unique cosmic experiment that we're given. So to acquire, I refer to it as being understanding the 3D language, because it's so easy to leave one's body as a child. I spent most of my first 15 years out of my body, and then I discovered sex and came back into my body.
Right.
And discovered love and discovered the spiritosexual aspect of my being, which was totally transcendent and introduced me to ritual, magic, etc., etc. So learning that 3D language is really important, and sport and collaboration, membership, etc., etc., leads us in a very powerful direction, as long as we're not seduced by the ego.
And you're absolutely right. And to this point, I will actually say this too. It's something that, as you were talking about it, I always noticed about myself, but this wasn't until later. Let's say my dad and brothers and I are playing some game, and it's a competition, say pool or something called cornhole, where you basically just throw bean bags at a board with a hole in it. Anyway, it's a Texas game. So let's say that we're playing that, and someone not on my team, someone I'm supposed to be going against, makes a great shot. I'm like, dude, awesome shot, man. That was great. And somebody will inevitably always remind me that I'm not on their team. Like, it's like I can't be okay with someone else having a physical feat or being proud of their achievement or proud of something just because we are supposed to be rivals for this next 20 minutes or whatever. Even in sports, and when I would play soccer and stuff, if somebody'd get a good move on me or something, I'd be like, dude, that was awesome, great job, well done. I'm not instantly hateful of these people just because we're pitted together and I'm wearing a one color shirt, you're wearing another color shirt. Now we're all here for an experience, so let's have that experience, but we don't have to be ugly to one another. You could have the experience and still be sportsman-like, right?
Mm, mm, mm. And so now the richness of your entire portmanteau, the arena of your podcast process is so wonderfully diverse. And what I always love about listening into your interviews is that you use the aspect of your integrity in every single conversation that you have. So you engage people on a very profound and a very deep level. And that's the real essence of the collaborative, isn't it? Because you have a genuine fascination and interest and care for the person that you're actually talking to. But for you personally, what do you feel has been one of the most accelerating forces that you've had or series in your podcast experience?
For me personally, or one presented for the audience?
No, for you personally.
For me personally, the really mind-blowing things were okay, I'll say this, and it's gonna be about a subject, but the subject's not what I'm talking about. Okay, one of the most profound ones was whenever I released an episode with a guy named David Weiss. He does stuff, called, for Flat Earth, okay? He's a flat earther, very proud flat earther. Has some phenomenal information, and it was an interesting episode. Now, let me back up and just tell you the whole thing about my show, and you know this already, is I am not here to prove anyone wrong or to prove myself right. Number one, I have no idea what the hell's going on. We've already talked about that the world could be flat around. I'm cool with either way. But also, I have no ego in the game. I have no desire to be salacious and to prove people wrong. So I have, but what this affords me is the opportunity to have the scope of a show that I do, because I am generally interested in just talking about the ideas. Let's go for it. If the earth is flat, let's talk about what that is. You know, I'm not going to dismiss it right off. Let's hear the man out. Let's hear what he has to say. It was fascinating. So it was a very interesting experiment anyway, because I approach my topics this way, and just really anything. Let's hear him out. Let's hear what he has to say. You know, only because that attitude has led me to way more amazing things than it hasn't. It actually hasn't led me to any horrible things. It's just led me to, okay, well, that's how you feel. This is how I feel. But in the comment section of that poor man's video. So this is what's so interesting too, is about just the world and about people. You know, we, Stuart, you and I do this. We put ourselves out there, and it's an interesting experiment just to say, hey, here's an idea. What do you think? And just to watch. The universe reveal itself in so many ways to you. Because if we are here as a unity consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, which I'm a big fan of that idea, so we'll just go with that for now from this perspective, then I would say that that is telling you that this is an option here. This is a part of you. This is something that that is here for that you could also be. Okay. So, but what's also very interesting about this is the points they were making. I went through Flat Earth episode and I was just like, there are thousands of comments of people going, yeah, but this, and they're absolutely 100% right. It's fact checked, it's backed up, it's proven, peer reviewed. Then they go, yeah, but what about this? Completely juxtaposition. One cannot exist without the other. It's a complete dichotomy, completely backed up, peer reviewed, absolutely backed up in fact. So what is true? I mean, the honesty that I could give you is I have no idea. I really don't. I've been in an airplane. I've not been to outer space. I can't tell you if it's a ball or not. I can tell you that ever since I was 18 years old and I walked by table 13 and some guy scoffed at his newspaper, I've been very, very reticent of any story that I'm told from any official source. Then you cross-check this with 5 minutes of research into the fact that NASA fakes things constantly. I mean, we have a joke in the community that NASA stands for never a straight answer. And or not a space agency. So whenever they are faking this stuff, now here's another interesting part about this perspective is what the show has taught me and what I've gleaned from this is I don't know what's going on, but I know a hell of a lot of what's not going on that they're saying is going on. And that is part of the discernment process. I don't think maybe necessarily that I'm meant to figure it out. I'd be bored, you know, I need the mysteries. So whenever you look at stuff like that, it's a big indicator that you know, who knows? Who really knows? But that's what's so wonderful about the type of perception I have on the show, and is because it opens me up to all of these incredible conversations. And if I had a hill to die on, or had nailed my colors to the mast, as one guest put it recently, or you know, planted my flag, I wouldn't have the show I do. I wouldn't have the experiences I do. I wouldn't have the perception. I wouldn't have been able to talk to such amazing people about amazing things, just for the sake of the conversation. It's just fascinating to me. And again, in that comment section, how people are so sure of what's going on in their reality and with themselves and how they see things and how it can't be any other way, and how they just scream till they're red in the face at each other. The image that always comes to mind with this is those two cartoon figures that are standing on either side of each other, opposing each other, facing each other. On the ground in front of them, as one presented, it's a 6. The other person's looking, it's a 9. And they're both screaming at each other. No, it's a 6. No, it's a 9. No, it's a 6. No, it's a 9. That's scaled up. Mind blowing. This is where I get the concepts that I do. You can have a billion different completely separate experiences here living at the same time. This is that consensus reality thing that we're talking about. So that has given me a lot of grace, and that I know people don't see the same world I do. I know that red is not red to people. I know that people come from a myriad of backgrounds. So the interesting part has been that understanding, but also to integrate it into conversation. So even if you read at a 5D level, which is how I've been putting it, which is why whenever you said that earlier, I was really impressed with that. But I can see through the 3D level, because yes, even though I've gone through that trap door and it closed behind me, I remember what those steps felt like climbing them up to that next level of consciousness. And so, and there's a great quote, to respect everyone at their own level of consciousness is part of consciousness.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I find myself lately, man. And it keeps getting more amazing. And I keep having more incredible conversations.
Yeah.
And I just love it. And it's
Well,
amazing.
it brings to. Thank you for sharing. I mean, that's a brilliant exposition. There are two observations that I'd love to just hone in on, because I feel that what you're teaching us are very profound tools, because you enter into the conversation as a collaborator,
Yes.
not as an adjudicator.
Yes.
And every conversation you have, you live the essence of non-judgmentalism.
Yes.
And as a result of that, what is born, it feels, even though the person may be uncomfortable because it's a new conversation, that level of non-judgmentalism that you bring to it, you bring forth, you actually give space for the spring of grace. And when we're that grace filled, when we are gracious and graceful, it opens up the gateway into the imaginal. It opens up a huge portal into the divine, because after all, it is the sum embrace of unity consciousness and total oneness, the grace that pours from the divine. All is love. All is love. Oh, so many things. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're having fun here. I love reading the comment section. Must every
Oh, yeah. Tell everybody hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks
Yeah.
for listening.
Oh, by the way, on the screen, if you can probably see private chat. Click
Oh, can
on,
I do that? Can I get in there?
and it will open up comments, and you can see all the comments that people are leaving. Can you see it?
I'll be damned. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
guys.
Okay. So,
Sweet.
unfortunately, our time is ticking fast.
Yes.
But ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions that you would like to ask of Mr. Thomas? Lots of wonderful observations. Deborah, thank you. Lovely. And Corinne, lovely, lovely, lovely observations. Yeah. Okay. So back to where we are. Welcome, everybody. I didn't go through everybody's name because otherwise it takes so long. And I wanted to really introduce you to the wonder of what Brandon is bringing to us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay.
What does Stephanie say?
She just said hello and love from Alaska.
Oh, how fantastic. Stephanie's in Alaska.
How did the podcast come to be? Do you mind if I answer that, Stuart?
Yeah, do. Go
So
for it.
I actually had a podcast a couple of years ago. I didn't even know what podcasting was 3 years ago. And my wife and I took her car to the store. We were listening to something in her car, and it was just dudes talking. I was like, what is this? Is it radio? What's going on? And she said, no, it's a podcast. And I was like, what is a podcast? So she told me, fell in love with it. It was our last podcast on the left, by the way. And then my wife and I went and saw them live in Dallas when they came. So I was like, this is crazy cool. I was now open to this idea that there was a whole platform out there that you just say whatever the hell you want. And it was really cool. And so I started it with my wife and a friend of mine who's an atheist and another friend of mine who is a devout Christian. And my wife and I are way more spiritually not either one of those things. I'll say that. And so we had a very interesting talk. We put out about 50 episodes. They were all scrubbed from the internet now. No way to find them at all. It was very immature and childish, but fun. Cut my teeth on podcasting. And then when the whole COVID thing happened, we separated out, obviously. And then I was like, well, I gotta, keep going. I just had this itch. And even halfway through with my my old podcast with my wife and friends, I was like, oh, I have to, get this UFO author on. And so I started making a list of all these really cool people I wanted to talk to. I thought it would apply to that show, but it didn't. It applied to this show. So what's really cool is I believe you were on that list, Stuart, from years ago when I wanted to start this thing. I'll have to find it and dig it out. But there were about 300 names on there, and I've checked off quite a few of them. And what's interesting is I've checked off a bunch by going back to look at that list to remember who I had on there. So it wasn't, I didn't go, oh, I got to talk to this person because they're on the list. I just kind of created a list, almost like scripting, right? And then all of a sudden I'd look back and go, man, that was Ronald Kinsella. I had him on my list. Or man, Stewart Pearce, finally. It only took 2 years. And then I get to hook up with these really cool people. So that's how it all started. I just want to talk to people about UFOs and ask them some questions I'd never heard them asked. And that's kind of my thing too. People are like, you ask great questions. Well, that's because I'm genuinely, Stewart, exactly what you said, curious. I actually care. And my entire show is ran by me and booked by me. So if you're on my show, it's because I really, really want to talk to you. So I do my due diligence to make sure that you feel welcome. I hope Stewart can mirror that.
This is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. And so, Ryan, if you could put Brandon's website up, please. So as Brandon speaks of, ladies and gentlemen, that, please do take this down, because there are a plethora of amazing conversations, podcasts.
Do you mind if I answer Angela's comment?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
fast. You're fast.
For the audience, what is the most profound discovery that you've made about consciousness? Ooh, okay.
Yes! Well done, Angela.
Well, way to go, Angela. Hi. Thank y'all so much for this. Everybody, by the way, is so sweet. Such sweet comments. I'm so grateful. This is overwhelming. I'm energy.
All over the world, with somebody from Paris. We got a last
bonsoir. I know. I love it. Okay, so I would say the most interesting thing about consciousness is how it ties into quantum theory. And this about the unity consciousness, about how we're all one, about actually one of the greatest things, because there's I don't know where to start, because it's a series, and Stewart, you know this, as far as whenever you go down the thought experiments of consciousness and you start looking into consciousness studies and quantum entanglement, and it just gets more and more and more amazing. So the big thing about consciousness, I would say, is that it's in everything, and then it's an underlining film. Now, really, psychedelics showed me this. It didn't teach me this. I learned this, I guess, audibly through the 3D experience of reading and all of that. But psychedelics showed me that there is a fabric that is here underlying everything, and that the distances between anything is just for a reference point for our experience. It's not true. It's just an illusion for the experience. It's kind of like when you go to a puppet show. There's someone behind there running those puppets. They're not two different entities talking. They're connected by an entity that's controlling them. They're having a narrative, and they may even bicker or put on a show. And this is also to consciousness, the thing about, Stewart, in your work, acting. If you look at this place like a play, which unity consciousness denotes this, then you basically have to where you get upset at the other or the bad people or the lower density vibrations. But when viewing it as a play from God's point of view, or source or unity consciousness point of view, then it's all necessary. You need the villain too. The villain and the hero come out and bow at the end of the play because it was necessary for the experience. And this is how I view everything here. This is why, as much as I would love to say this, and this need to be fixed, changed, and improved, I honestly can't justify one of them. Everything is necessary here because it's all just a big learning experience, even the worst things here. What's more and more amazing to that discovery would be that it's necessary for the sense of consciousness to discover itself. This is the mechanism in which it operates. And that's why I don't think anything in this plane, whatever this is, will be perfect, because it's not supposed to be. This is where you learn, and you can't do that if you wouldn't go to a movie where a man just walked down the street and made it safe and then went into a building, and the end of the movie, that'll be $8. You need drama. You need learning. You need rock bottoms. You need that stuff. It's part of the journey. It's part of the hero's journey. It's part of the story. It's part of this place. Was the most interesting thing about consciousness, I could say, that I feel that I've discovered. Or whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. It's just accurate to me. It's just an observation.
Towards the end of my conversation with you, when you interviewed me on your podcast, you asked me a fascinating question that I've never been asked by anybody else. And we had this extraordinary conversation, as we are doing now. And you said, I want to play that back to you, actually, if I may, because it was so sweet.
Oh, do you have audio queued up? Look at us. God,
what does consciousness look like? The audience is getting concerned. People are writing, I can't hear.
I can't hear it.
So, can you see what Brandon is showing us? He's showing us consciousness. Okay, so
I couldn't hear any of it. I hope it was. I mean, it was. I see everybody's reactions, which is great.
Yeah.
Y'all are so sweet, by the way. Everybody's so nice.
I'm very blessed by the
You are.
people that attend to this wonderful platform, as to all of my other workshops. Yeah, no, the sound wasn't off, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that you've been listening, those of you who've been with us for an hour, you've been listening to one of the greatest thought jugglers in the cosmos.
Oh.
The gentleman called Brandon Thomas. So when he actually shows you what consciousness looks like, you will become very upset because you can't hear him. What he's showing you is complete presence, you see. That's what okay.
Yeah.
Come back
I like thought juggler. I prefer to think of myself as an intellectual troublemaker. I'm a big fan of that. I'm gonna get a t-shirt made.
Yeah, but you're really a pussycat, you see. We're dressed up as a lion.
That I'll take it. Yeah, we'll take it.
Brandon, this has been the most wonderful frolic. Thank you so much. Bless you for coming on. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, our time has come to its point, as it often does. But of course, this conversation will go on throughout the cosmos. You do realize that.
Oh yeah.
It is now resonating deep within your bodies. So what I would love you to do is to really tune into, and perhaps Ryan will bring up, my wonderful tech manager will bring up the website yet again, so that you can scribble down. We'll put it into Facebook. It will be on the YouTube, expandingrealitypodcast.com.
Yeah, come by and say hi. We got a lot of cool stuff going on over there.
You must go. I'm sure you've all been suitably seduced by the wonder of Mr. Brandon Thomas. Brandon, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I'd just like to tell everybody thank you. So stop by and make a connection. I'd love to reach out to everyone. Thank you so much, Stewart. This was great. This flew by, man.
Wonderful. So stay where you are. And to everybody, namaste, namaste, namaste. And don't forget that on Thursday, I will be in conversation with John Burgos, and the quality of that conversation is called the Angel's Heart Spa. Come along. We'll have an amazing time. And there will be callers in, and I will be providing soul readings from the angels, etc., etc. The times will be written after this wonderful conversation on Facebook. Namaste, namaste. Thank you, Ryan. Stay there.